Welcome, welcome to Tiny Talk episode 3. This is going to be a bit of a pertinent episode. This is going to be talking about the rule change that we made just about, how long was it? Like 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago? Yeah. And so we're talking about that this episode. And I'm the Cosmerian. With me, I have Mike, Borgarden, and Charlotte. And we're just going to go down the line and give us a bit about ourselves. And, you know, could be pretty much anything. I try to make it so that when I introduce myself, I give like a new factoid about myself given I'm in every episode. So, yeah, today I'm the Cosmerian. I am, fun fact, a bio major. I am planning on pursuing a master's and likely PhD in entomology. I want to be an entomologist, but as a side gig, I also am part of the committee. So, yeah, and tiny leader stuff. On to Mike.
Hello, hello. This is Mike, aka M1K3 on Discord, one of the core members of the Tiny Leader Committee. And because I cost 3 or less, I'm one of your tiny leaders.
And Borgarden.
I'm Bastian, aka Borgarden on Discord. I'm a doctor here from Germany. I'm a consultant for the Tiny Leaders Reborn Committee, and I bet Mike rehearsed that entry.
About 5 or 6 times, for sure.
Only 5 or 6?
Yeah, I'm underestimating.
Hi, my name is Charlotte. I've been playing Magic since about 2009. Raz the Eldrazi was my first pre-release. And I don't know if you knew this, but I was the person who came up with Tiny Leaders about 12 years ago. I took a break at the beginning of the pandemic, kind of started playing regularly again during Foundations. It's been a blast kind of being in the hot seat again, starting my collection from zero. Got to teach my wife how to play, got to make a bunch of new friends at my dad's store. And a few months ago, I finally took the plunge and joined the TLR server. It has been an absolute delight not only to be playing Magic again, but to be on board helping Tiny Leaders again as the committee's newest member. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and this episode is a bit of a special episode because we're going over committee rulings and stuff like that. But that does mean that we don't have a community guest star this episode. However, we do have Charlotte, who's stepping in for the community guest star role because she was a consultant, and she is a consultant, but she was only given the consultant role about a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Specifically, one day after the rules change happened.
Well, there we go. Yeah. Basically, she wasn't involved in pretty much any of the previous discussions on this ruling. So she's kind of the stand-in for the community guest star, but she was still like somewhat involved, which I'm sure we'll get to. For those who don't know, the rules change recently was something made, again, like 2 weeks ago as of recording this, and was about the edge cases on mana value and the philosophy of that and how we treat those. And I'll have Mike, who was the one that was mostly spearheading the conversation for this change in the committee. I'll have him explain what the deal is.
Fair enough. So for those of you who do remember, the rules that we had regarding split cards, adventures, and MDFCs were a bit mixed. Split cards, we just said, hey, whatever is the mana value of a split card that WotC decides, we're going to respect that. And if it's greater than 3, it's not legal in the format. And then we went over to adventures, and we're like, adventures are cool. We're not even going to think about them as 2 different cards. It's got, the mana value of the main quote unquote card. And then MDFCs, we said, hey, these are 2 cards on 1 piece of cardboard. And if both sides don't have a mana value of 3 or less, then it's not going to be legal in the format. And no matter if WotC's rules consider it a card with mana value 3 or less. So I know we're singling out these cards, and definitely for a reason, because they are essentially 2 cards on 1 piece of cardboard. And I know there could be a lot of argument, lots of arguments made for, well, why not flashback cards? Why not X value cards, or cards with kicker? But specifically these cards, because you can see that by the design and the templating on the cards, that there are really 2 separate cards with 2 separate names, type lines, mana costs, and effects text, which are all called characteristics. And so, again, as I explained, there was a differentiation how we treated those cards in the format.
And what exactly was that differentiation? What was the hard rule, the actual change that we made?
So, yeah, the new rule for handling these types of cards is that basically if you see a piece of cardboard with 2 distinct or discrete cards, then you're going to look at each card's mana value, and both of those have to be 3 or less to be legal in the format. Basically extending what the current rule for MDFCs, extending that over to adventures and split cards. And what that did was, well, it kept MDFCs the same. We lost a few adventures, and we gained about 20 split cards into the format.
Yeah, absolutely. And so hopefully that's like a decent idea of how this new ruling is to be understood. I will have, while Mike is talking, I hopefully have basically just had a bunch of images going and doing a side-by-side comparison of what's legal, what's not legal, and some of like the changes to that. Like, for example, Imedane's Recruiter has 3 mana, but has an adventure of 5 mana. That was previously legal, but now is illegal. And then something like Miles Morales from the new set has a 2 mana backside and I believe a 6 mana, a 2 mana front side, and I believe a 6 mana backside. And that wasn't legal before and is still not legal now. And then split cards previously was cumulative, so something like Fire and Ice wouldn't be legal because the total mana value is 4. But now you're only looking at each card, and so something like Fire and Ice, because each one has less than 4 mana in its mana cost, in each of their costs, that is now legal. So now that that's out of the way, we're going to get into the questions. So, the first question is, in your words, how would you describe the goal of this rules change? And we'll start off with Mike. You get to yap more.
Yappity yap is what I do best. As I was explaining, we were going over this inconsistency in the rules regarding these types of cards. And there was a lot of discussion and debate in what direction we should take. And at least for me, it was, at first I thought, hey, you know what? This makes sense to just observe WotC's definition for mana value for each of these types of cards. And we should probably just go with that for simplicity. But then I had the idea of reaching out to Charlotte and kind of getting a sense of what the origins of the format were and what her own perspective on these cards might be. Because look, when TLO started, TL, original TL, Tiny Leaders, when it started, there were only split cards, and they used to the split cards mana value rule had changed, for those who don't know, in Amonkhet. And before Amonkhet, the mana value of a split card was dependent in the zone it was. So it could have a mana value of 6, or it could have a mana value of 3, depending on whatever the card it was. And so when Tiny Leaders started, split cards were legal as long as both sides had a mana value of 3 or less. And shoot, I mean, if Tiny Leaders would have been a thing even before split cards, I mean, split cards have been around for a long time, and they would have, that would be easy, right? Whatever WotC says is mana value 3 or less, there you go. Back then, it would have been CMC. But as I got her response, I started thinking about more and more of why are we having such a hard time nailing this down? And it occurred to me that it was because we hadn't defined a design philosophy, a core design philosophy for the format, where, when you look back at Charlotte's original design, you could definitely see some clear things of mana value 3 or less. There was this color identity restriction. You had your 25 life, 50 cards. I think these 4 things, at least for me, really defined the format. And as we've been, as the committee has been evolving, we've been having to kind of flesh out not just ourselves as a committee, but also define the format and put it in writing, put it somewhere where people can read it and understand it. And so we gradually transitioned from this being a rules discussion to being one of a philosophy of what it means to be the format that plays cards or builds their decks, because it's a deck building restriction, builds their decks with cards with a mana value of 3 or less. Especially in a time where WotC's own rules regarding cards like these, which, right, 2 cards, 1 piece of cardboard, can differentiate depending on its own templating, right? Split cards, you get the sum. of both halves, the mana value, right? You sum or the total mana value of both halves, and that is the mana value of the card. For MDFCs, it's only the front face. For adventures, it's only the creature part. And so we kind of had to reconcile what that means. And so two competing philosophies emerged. One from Sarah, another core member, which really followed the old school Tiny Leaders rule of split cards when their mana value was dependent on the zone, which I gave this really dry, boring name of canonical theory or philosophy, which said, or no, sorry, this was a discrete philosophy, which said you need to evaluate each half of the card, its mana value, independent of each side. In the other zone for deck building purposes, and if both halves were, or both half faces, or whatever you want to call them, were 3 or less, then the whole card was legal. And then on the flip side, Lion, our other core member, really championed the canonical philosophy, which was, hey, whatever WotC says is mana value 3 or less, that's what we should observe. It's simple. Players can understand it. And so the debate really jumped off from there. Of course, we know which one won out. But we gave them real cute names. Well, not we, our rules manager. The canonical became Team Inquisition of Kozilek, and Team Bobblehead was the discrete philosophy, mainly because we were concerned, or Team Bobblehead, because we want to be able to cast, I think I'm going to be horrible at explaining that because I've been really sipping on this beer. But I'm going to pause here because I have been yapping. So, Kaz, where do you want to take this?
The ultimate yapster. Yeah, we can get into like the two sides once we get into the second question. But first, let's hear Borgarden's take on this. In your words, how would you describe the goal of this rules change from your perspective?
All right. First of all, I would like to mention that Mike is not yapping. I could listen to him explaining this for hours. And I think this is very important for the listeners to understand that the quote unquote simple question of what is mana value 3 or less has become difficult with the evolving of the cards. And to answer the question, what was the goal of this rules change? The goal was to fit this complexity of different cards into our Tiny Leaders Reborn identity. And this is the important part to understand, that this on the surface simple question where we had these two different points of views led to philosophy questions, or I think it was even deep math theory that Gray and Mike were going down the rabbit hole in order to find answers and arguments for the different standings. So it was a really, really hard and tough decision. But that was the goal of this rules change, to fit the complexity of the modern cards into our own identity. I think this is the whole matter in a nutshell.
I'm totally going to have to find those math theory, whatever the hex, and have that flash on screen, because that sounds like the nerdiest shit that I have ever heard, and I somehow probably completely missed it. But
Yeah, actually, can I jump in there?
yeah, feel free.
Yeah. I totally agree with Borgarden is everything that I said could be summed up as trying to fit, modern card design into the identity of our format. Beautifully put. And yes, recently, or rather, once we dropped the announcement, and there was a lot of chatter inside of the Discord server, one of our members said something really, really hitting it on the nose, and that was Jesh, when they said this is akin to mana value identity, equating it to, the mana value version of color identity. And so recently, spoilers, I guess, but the name Discrete Philosophy was derived from this whole thing of kind of discrete mathematics, where you're looking at things individually. And I started, and I took what Jesh said, and I started really wanting to flesh out this whole mana value identity. It's not sold on the name. I guess neither am I. We're trying another one. But I used discrete mathematics to describe things as a set on the cards. I don't want to get too technical and kill people with boredom, but looking at different sets of, if a card has basically more than one set of characteristics, then this mana value identity, or what we have working now is cost identity, is the set of mana values. And if every value in the set is 3 or less, the card is, we have a new thing called tiny, meaning it is 3 or less, and legal in the format. And Gray was fleshing it out on his end by a rule standpoint. And so we've been collaborating to kind of bring some new definitions and actually incorporate them into our rules. Nothing is set in stone yet. He's got something really, really legit in the works. It just kind of has to be finalized. But yes, it is based off some mathematics. Yeah, sorry for jumping in there like that.
You're good. You're good. This is gonna be like, I try to make these kind of structured, but it's just an excuse for people to yap and talk with each other. But that said, let's jump to Charlotte. Charlotte, as somebody who was not involved in this rules change, or at least not really that involved, how would you describe, as an outsider, the goal of this rules change?
I think I've been in a pretty unique situation, because Mike did mention that he did approach me, and I did share my overall opinion. He kind of shared it in an unbiased way, saying, hey, just theoretically, what would you think of this? Like, I had no real inkling as to the bigger picture that, he then informed me, like, yeah, we'd made this decision. Obviously, I saw the announcement and was like, no wonder. I understand now. So let's see if I can out-yap the yapper and yap a bit myself, because I do have a lot to say about just, like, the overall, like, choice or difference between the two choices, because Mike brought up the difference between mana identity, quote unquote, and color identity. And I know some folks who play Commander that feel very strongly about color identity in Commander being exactly as it is now, staying unchanged. And I know others that are like, well, if I want to play the Redeemed in my, mono white tokens deck, I want to be able to do that because he's hybrid mana. And it's like, yeah, objectively, I could actually see both sides of this. There's pros to cons to this side and the other side, and I actually feel the exact same about Bobblehead versus Inquisition. There is absolutely valid reason to both arguments that I end up just wishing, I wish there was just one umbrella option that you could pick, but there isn't. And there's going to be players that are not happy about it. There's going to be some players that are like, oh, thank goodness it was the one I was hoping for, But Tiny Leaders at its core has kind of always been about the magical number 3. It's no secret. I mean, early Tiny Leaders even started at 30 life for no other reason than that 30 started with the number 3. And so another thing that Mike mentioned is that split cards weren't changed until Amonkhet. And Tiny Leaders kind of rode the tide that it did 2013, 14, 15, which was Theros block, Khans block, and I think the beginning of Battle for Zendikar, like that year. That part is a bit hazy for me still, because I was like, all right, I got to go to school and be a human being now, I guess, because Tiny Leaders was born in high school. But digression aside, like, yeah, it was just split cards for so long. And far and away from Dragon's Maze, the fuse card that's like 1 in a blue, bounce something, 2 in a black, target player sacrifices a creature, you could pay 5 to fuse them. That was like a mainstay in the SIG River Cutthroat control deck that I played, which was like the deck that I used to test all of the control strategies. And that, I don't think that card was ever cut for anything else because it was so flexible. It was like essential to my play patterns. And the same could be said about Fire and Ice and other cards like that. But even at the time, we didn't play Boom and Bust, which was a 2-mana burn spell and a 6-mana land destruction spell stapled together, because one of them cost 6. And Tiny Leaders at its core has always been about aesthetics also, in a way, and the exploiting of alternate casting costs. It was like finding a little treat at the bottom of the barrel, like, oh, I didn't know I still had this, when it's Profane Command and you're casting it for 6. The mana cost on the stack is 8. So part of the excitement of building a Tiny Leaders deck was pinpointing those niche cards that are like, yeah, these cards are good. They're fine. They're probably pretty good in Commander, but they're really good in Tiny Leaders. And so cards like Forbidden Alchemy has been power crept to hell and back. But at the time, 3 mana, top 4 cards, pick one, put the rest in the bin. And then you can flashback it for 7. And you could do that because the mana value of the card was 3. So it's like, oh, that's a cool include. That's even better in Tiny Leaders. In the exact same vein that things like Smother or Liquefy or other things like Abrupt Decay, Inquisition, for the namesake, gave a shit about the mana value 3 or less. It's all of these kind of also do, even though they aren't scripted to say so. And so I think the goal of the change is to just consolidate best we can. There has to be a ruling, just this, in the same way that there's a color identity ruling. And so if we tie in all of the considerations, it's like, what at the end of the day is the basis for a card being played in Tiny Leaders? It's mana value 3 or less. The whole card should have that written on it. So my examples would be, for an adventure, for example, Brazen Borrower and Petty Theft. It's a 3-mana creature and a 2-mana adventure. Those are both spells that independently could be assessed to be Tiny Leaders legal. Whereas the big 7-mana enchantment, Virtue of Persistence, that's a no-go. That's an obvious no-go. But the adventure part is 2 mana, so you could make a case to be able to play just the adventure. But then you're kind of creating weird logistics of gameplay and not deck building restrictions, which is what the Tiny Leaders rule set is. Like, realistically, the Tiny Leaders deck building restrictions don't really give a shit about the stack. But the other example would be like, okay, Valky, God of Lies, an MDFC. It costs 2. You could play the front card. And part of me is somehow more okay with the MDFC being 2 on one side, but 7 on the other side for Tibalt. Because it's like, okay, well, I'm only looking at one card. But if I'm going to give special treatment to MDFCs and not adventures or split cards, that just doesn't create a through line. And so what I think the rules decision is creating that through line, finding the common denominator amongst all of them, and coming to the best conclusion in the spirit of the format.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for me, I think I definitely agree that I think the biggest part of this rules change is just to bring consistency. Before we were saying, oh, MDFCs, you have to check each side, but for adventures, you only have to check the main side, and for split cards, it's the sum of them. And while technically the two of those, like those second two, were just like we were going with what WotC said, but then the third one of like MDFCs, we were just going on what felt to be in the spirit of the format, which we didn't really define or quantify in any way. We just thought, it does kind of feel weird to have, a Tibalt that is out here as a 7-mana permanent in our tiny little format. But with this rules change, things are consistent in how they're applied. But I will also note that the other side of things, which was the Team Inquisition, which is just saying, okay, we're going with what WotC officially decides on that if it can be hit by something like Inquisition of Kozilek, so if from the hand it has 3 mana or less within the game, then it's legal. That would also be consistent in its own way, right? It is saying we are consistently, for all of these edge cases, deferring to Wizards of the Coast. And I'll get into why, on my opinion on that, a little bit further on. But I will also point out that, like, for MDFCs, this might be something that I'll have the chance to bring up again. But basically, this idea of, okay, if something like Virtue of Persistent, which is a 2-mana adventure and a 7-mana enchantment, or even better, Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter, and Valki, God of Lies, if because the front side has 2 mana and the back side has 7 mana, or if it's 7 mana for the main side and 2 mana for the adventure, if as long as the front side or the main side has 3 mana or less, then it's fine. It feels kind of weird to me that if the front side of Valki, God of Lies was Tibalt's Cosmic Imposter, it wouldn't be legal, but because of the way it is now, and because just like WotC somewhat arbitrarily chose that this would be the front side, that it's now legal. I personally think that's a bit weird in application, but either way, with either one of the two sides we were choosing, the goal of this was to bring consistency. But now we all get to talk about what each other's thoughts. Give our thoughts on each other's thoughts. So I'll just talk about things.
I feel like I had a lot to say, and I would invite any interested. My
A shout out, Jesh. Y'all don't even know how busy I am right now. I have notes in front of me, and I haven't even been reading them. But again, I think what Borgarden said really kind of put everything in a nice, neat bow. We're trying to put these modern card designs and put them into this format. By the way, at least the only format I know that cares about mana value. If you know of another one, don't tell me, because this is
I won't.
the best format, the best format ever. Yeah. And then, Charlotte mentioned this whole thing about that Tiny Leaders is the format of 3, right? So whole thing really kind of comes down to understanding the format conceptually. I think also there's been at least some kind of arguments made inside the committee that Tiny Leaders Reborn isn't Tiny Leaders original, and we're not beholden to the constraints that were created or put on as design features. But I would argue that TLR is this natural extension of TLO, mainly because TLO stopped being curated. And that's no knock on its awesome creator or her cohorts. Life kind of happens, and you need to put magic on hold to take care of real shit. But some awesome people in France, Olivier, Arnaud, and Clement, they were active, and they were our original core members. Part of what they did was reach out to Stephen, who, again, I mentioned is one of Charlotte's cohorts in the Tiny Leaders original format days. And there was amending was tried. And before that, there was communication as to how they should update their band list, because they were pulling data to make sure Tiny Leaders stayed up to date and healthy. Now, again, life gets in the way, but the format doesn't wait. And I don't care what anybody says. You want to say, oh, it was solved. It's an eternal format. There's new cards coming in all the time. I will say that, yeah, it's stalled. But
that's what I'm saying.
That's
what I'm saying. I can understand the critique.
Going. Sorry, go ahead, Charlotte.
No, that's okay. I was just like pumping you up because I fully agreed. The rate at which people would yell at me that Tiny Leaders was solved in a dead format, it's like, okay, well, sets are still coming out and I'm still revising my decks, and so are my friends. So we'll see. And here we are at the we'll see phase. Yeah, Steve and I. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Fine, I will. Steve and I both grew up and got busy. We're best friends then. We were best friends now. Like, that never stopped. We never stopped hanging out. We just were adults instead of being in high school, Things happen, things come up. It didn't mean I stopped caring about Tiny Leaders. I thought it was awesome that Olivier and company kind of took the reins so that I could breathe a little bit, knowing that, okay, this thing that I did, this impact that I had on the game I love, is still being curated. And, the further I got from Magic, the less I knew what was going on. And so Steve would kind of keep me in the loop every now and then and just give me an update when we were hanging out. It's like, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, good for them, And that's pretty much how I thought until I started playing Magic again last year. But I think as it stands, are TLO and TLR different? Yes, they are. But they're both Tiny Leaders to me, and I'm its mom. So it's just like watching my own kid grow up, for Christ's sake, So it's like, of course it's going to change and undergo a bit of evolution. I think what Tiny Leaders has become now is awesome. I think what Tiny Leaders was before was awesome. I wouldn't have so actively curated and tried to push it if I didn't believe in what I had made. And so it's like, I don't know. It's hard for me to think of them as different in the same way that others do, while also respecting that, the time for TLO is has come and gone. It's not in the spotlight anymore, and we've progressed to TLR, which is great. I think it has been fostered very, very nurtured, very lovingly. So
Yeah,
that was one of the important things for me, which I absolutely didn't know and which hit me like a hammer, is that you came up with this format while you were in high school. And I don't know if everybody knows like what that means. I didn't know that. I thought you were already an adult when you came up with it.
Oh, honey, I wish I was an adult when I started that thing.
But this really is, I think, is important for the listeners to take home, that the original format was made by I won't say teenager, but somebody in high school. So all this talk about tiny leaders has been solved and whatever, I think it just was in a limbo because you were getting life stuff in the way, which is of course happens to everyone. But that's for me and a thing that I would like to highlight. The funny thing is that when I talk about tiny leaders, I don't talk about Tiny Leaders Original or Tiny Leaders Reborn, or when we talk about Tiny Leaders in a play group, it's always Tiny Leaders. We don't do any additions to it.
Yeah, I don't make a distinction. And like when I've been telling people that I'm on the Tiny Leaders Reborn committee, I do say so. And I elaborate like, yep, this is not, I'm not at the helm. I'm not driving the boat. I don't want to. I'm happy to be on the boat. And it has been an absolute delight that everybody has been so kind since I joined the server, and I've gotten to hear a bunch of the new memories that people have made. People have reached out to me and said like, hey, you made an awesome thing. Thank you so much. This thing means a lot to me. And like, those are the reasons that I've kind of had this full circle moment of just like, okay, this thing that I made and kind of set aside for the time being, went to college, dropped out, went to college again, graduated, and have worked 3 different career jobs that I do hate, but that's a topic for another day. It's great to, be able to reminisce and kind of reclaim it almost without all the baggage that I used to have with it. Because, being at the front of the ship was fucking hard, putting it really lightly. And so I don't have to have that weight on me. I don't have to have the ball and chain kind of follow me around, like threatening to pull me under, because that is kind of how it felt. And I'm not going to speak for any of the current core members or the previous core members, but it's like decisions like this rules change are just not easy at any stage. And so it's like, unfortunately, we do have to make a decision, rip the Band-Aid off, and then go from there. And so now is the phase of just we're listening, we're understanding the player feedback, because Tiny Leaders is for the players by other players,
Yeah, no, it was easy for me. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Wait, guys. Yapamaru, Loyal Hound here. So, yes, Charlotte's right. Tiny Leaders Reborn isn't exactly what Tiny Leaders was, but I think a lot of that had to do with the evolution, the testing that the French playgroup did, but also the respect that they give to the original creator and her cohorts, to not just say like, hey, we're going to take this format over. No, they respected it and said, hey, we're going to create this offshoot which completely uses your format as a base. We have identified some issues with it, mainly due to how cards are being designed, and what kind of strategies are being stifled. So some more functional design aspects, or really one thematic, at least I would say it's thematic design of the 3-color restriction was done away with. I have something to comment about that, obviously, because I can't stop talking. But I think part of that is with Magic players, we sometimes, at least not the spikes, sometimes identify ourselves with those colors that we play, and it's hard to reconcile having to limit colors of play, more so than mana value. And I think at that point when they did away with that, it was functionally okay because so many new cards of higher quality had come out that there was less risk of good stuff piles dominating the format. Of that, they were very careful of. Also changing the life from 25 to 20. And I will admit, I very much miss the uniqueness of 25. But those players and that group of leadership, I think were much more qualified than at least myself to make that change, and I wouldn't want to change it back without a tremendous amount of testing. But to me, yeah, TLR is really just a natural extension of the original Tiny Leaders format, which is why I think we should at least keep the vision and of that whole, hey, we want to build our decks with cards that have a printed mana cost that evaluate to a mana value of 3 or less, regardless of whether, they're 2 cards on one piece of cardboard or just one. Dang. Cosmarian, stop me now.
Keys to Yap City. I'm taking the keys from you and giving them to Cosmarian.
Yippee. Okay. Yeah. So usually these questions are something that I let kind of go to its natural end and then move on to its then I move on to the question, but I think we probably do have to actually move on now. Okay, so I'm going to ask the second question now, after we've had a long yap on the first one. And so the second question is, related to the first one of what is your opinion on this rules change, right? So what is your personal thoughts? What do you think? Do you think this was the right change? Do you think there's a better change? Stuff like that. And we'll start with Mike.
Sorry. Oh man. Lots of laughs over here.
You clown.
Yeah, send all your hate mail to @thecosmarian at Discord. Yes, I.
What do you mean? Why are you tearing our girl down for your yapper? Actually,
yeah,
Cosmarian, can I go first?
Yeah,
Sure. Let's let you know what, everything's out the window. Let's let Charlotte go first.
I'm here to ruin everything. It's great.
Wow.
Cool. Awesome.
Succinct. Charlotte, if you really wanted to go first, you can go first. Totally.
That's it's kind of as a bit, but it's also, I feel like I've said a lot of my opinion on the matter prior to now. So it's this is the side that I was on. If I had to pick a side retroactively, it is kind of in line with my vision coincidentally.
Yeah.
So it's great.
And Mike, how about you as the second person to go?
Yeah. Yeah, look, I this is the side I voted for. To be candid, as I mentioned earlier, we were having the rules discussion. I think I was absolutely leaning towards the WotC's definition of whatever mana value 3 or less was, which is weird because when I think of myself in the kind of the tiny leader sphere, I think that I'm one of the persons who has been so obsessed with tiny leaders that I should have really kind of known better. But WotC doesn't make it easy. Oh, did you hear all that noise? I'm just fiddling with my microphone. But yeah, WotC doesn't make it easy. And man, I've never really been one to think so much of game design because essentially, when you're on the committee side, a lot of that is game design, right? You are designing this format, which becomes a sub game of Magic the Gathering. But I've had to immerse myself in a lot of, videos that talk about game theory, and Distraction Makers has been great, by the way. But really having to look at other formats, doing research. I kind of don't take my position on the committee lightly. Also, not too seriously, although maybe my fellow committee members might tell you otherwise. But yeah, I was really, really kind of starting to be sold on this thing of, some simplicity is best, especially when a big part of me, of what I want, is for tiny leaders not to be a meme. It was a meme for so long, and it's like being in love with something, but that's also something that everybody makes fun of. It doesn't feel that nice. And so my goal, at least my personal goal while being on the committee, is to change everybody's fucking mind about tiny leaders, and make it not a meme, make it some sort of legitimate format akin to Legacy Modern. I don't know if I should mention Old School in this grouping, as it's niche.
Yes.
It's niche. And it is niche, right? Like,
You have an audience for it, Mike.
And listen, niche is different than meme. And so I thought, for a second there, why not make it more simple for new players so that it's easier to grok? And but then, really thinking about MDFCs having a higher mana value on the back, and what that looks like on the battlefield, aka in play, because I'm old. It didn't really make any sense. And there were arguments of, hey, and arguments, I'm saying post announcement of, but now, that's not okay because I can't abrupt decay that. And yes, but these split cards being actually mana value greater than 3, I can't take it with Inquisition of Kozilek. There's always these corner cases that pop up because Magic has become such a complex game, and that's okay. And I know what we had was fine because you could abrupt decay anything on the board. You could Inquisition anything in the hand, but at its heart, you have to understand this was never a restriction about how you play your cards. It was a restriction of how you build your deck. And so, as the arguments started kind of flying, and I will make this clear, I don't think any argument was incorrect. Using WotC's definition of mana value is not incorrect. Using our now discrete theory of evaluating a card and whether it's tiny or not is not incorrect, but just one naturally seems much more in line with what tiny leaders with the concept of what Tiny Leaders was and really should still be. I'll shut the fuck up now.
All right.
I was just writing the little like action cut marker in the chat until you shut yourself up.
Oh no. Okay. Well, Beauregardin, what's your opinion on things?
Well, there are a few things that I have opinions now on. The first thing being that Mike, I think, is like you should not play down your seniority or your investment. I think you are one of the persons who thinks most about Tiny Leaders, so your input was very welcome. I have to say, I was also on the team that voted for this solution, and I think I want to make it clear to the listeners that the complexity of the whole topic was more than you think. And so it really boiled down all the discussions that we had and all the arguments that both sides brought forth. It came down on how do you feel for the format. And I think the solution that we chose is one that comes close to how we feel about the format and the card identities and the mana value of 3. And what I like is making it more easy, making it more accessible. And even if we diverge from the rulings of WotC and make our own little rulings there, I think for the format's sake, it was the right decision.
All right. Yeah, for me, I am probably, I guess, out of this group, the most like neutral on this. I wouldn't say that I was the one that like spurred the conversation, but I was definitely one of like the ones that jump started it, which was this idea of like something that has always bothered me since I joined in mid 2023 was that there was this inconsistency in the rules with MDFCs being, decided that it's not in flavor, it's not in the spirit of the format to be playing Tybalt's Cosmic Imposter in the format. Which, I was fine with. I generally agreed with. But then, that's not logic that was applied to adventures. Why? I don't know, because adventures weren't really a problem, and the people didn't really care that much. But it was kind of annoying. And then the third thing was split cards, which are, not exactly the same thing, as not quite as similar as adventures and MDFCs, but they're like pretty darn close. And yeah, we ended up going with that idea of qualifying these three things as equating them through having them each be multi-characteristic cards with a individual mana cost and type line, right? So it's not like an alternate casting cost like Dash or Flashback or Overload, where those are alternate casting costs, but they don't have their own characteristics associated with it, right? It's still the same card, just with some things changed. With something like split cards and adventures and MDFCs, those are like wholly two different cards. And so for me, that inconsistency between all three of those was really annoying and was something that I didn't really have the courage to bring up before. But then I think somebody must have mentioned it offhand, and I just kind of went off about it. And very much encouraged that because I wanted there to be like a cohesive ruling on these things. Now, I was very much back and forth on what that ruling would be for the longest time. In the end, still, if we decide that in like a month, everybody hates this new rules change, and we want to go to like full 180 to that Team Inquisition and just have basically everything that we had before except MDFCs, now the front is all that matters, I'd be fine with that because that's consistent, right? It's consistently saying all right, we're just deferring to Wizards of the Coast on this. But, in the end, I ended up siding with the thing that was generally agreed upon, which was that ruling of basically each card is their own thing, Team Bobblehead, right? Which I think, so Team Inquisition's easy to figure out. Team Bobblehead was, a bit hard to explain. It's something Gray came up with of Team Inquisition and Team Bobblehead, but basically, specifically, Perception Bobblehead is a card that allows you to cast a spell of mana value 3 or less from your deck, and it allows you to cast, an adventure spell if its mana value is 3 or less, or a split card if, you can cast a half of a split card, and that half is 3 mana or less. Or you can cast the backside of an MDFC as long as it's 3 or less. And so it's basically saying that every part of a card can be cast using something like Perception Bobblehead. And so, for me, I think in the end I like this solution just because even with Wizards ruling, even if we're consistently saying, okay, we'll just let Wizards do the work, Wizards doesn't actually recognize our format. Well, there's technically, technically, Gavin Verhey made an article in 2013 about Tiny
It was
Leaders?
2015. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, my bad. 2015.
You think I didn't have that pinned on my fucking wall?
Yeah, sorry,
Oh
my bad.
God. I could not believe that ever happened. I, ever since, have just wanted to talk Gavin's brains out. Hey, do you want to sit down with me for a full 8-hour day and just talk about Tiny Leaders and card design? That's my dream.
You know what? Hey, sometimes, maybe, hopefully, we can get that conversation for you. That's also my dream, is for you to have that conversation. It's not me to have the conversation. It's for you to have that conversation.
You're so considerate. Thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody's dreams should be about me.
Yeah.
That's sarcastic, by the way, for the listeners.
So technically speaking, Gavin Verhey wrote an article about Tiny Leaders, and so it is technically officially recognized by Wizards. However, it's not an officially endorsed format. We'll word it like that. Is that okay with you, Charlotte?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not yet an endorsed format by Wizards. And so that is something that in the end, I think that was a big decider for me of, we can defer to Wizards ruling, but they don't care about our format. They don't know about our format. Well, they do know about our format, but they don't know about Tiny Leaders Reborn, probably. And so, I think having our own philosophy is a better idea than just deferring to what Wizards says. But that said, does anybody have thoughts on each other's thoughts for this question?
That's
sure
a tall question to ask, considering last question.
I'm so sorry.
You're the one apologizing for mine and Mike's yapping? Yeah. Damn, I should take you everywhere and have a little shield.
What's the question? I'm just kidding. Shout out Gavin Verhey, by the way, the connoisseur of niche formats, WotC legend.
I love Gavin Verhey so much. I think he's
one of my biggest inspirations in Magic.
Yeah, he's probably one of my favorite designers for one of my favorite head people in Wizards. He's great.
Actually, did you guys know that we have a WotC employee in the server?
I did not.
That's confidential information.
Ooh.
But yeah, I do know. And if you're listening to this, We are watching you. You don't think we know what's going on in our server? We know.
This is when Mike reveals that he's actually working for Wizards and he signed the craziest NDA of his life.
Man, that'd be cool. I mean, I'd be underpaid, but that'd be cool.
All right. Well, we only have so much more time left before Bergarden has to take off. So
Yeah. So do we
keep the
have
train
any
going.
like thoughts on each other's thoughts, or have we already done that somehow?
I think we have already done this somehow. Indeed.
Okay, cool. We're just gonna move on to the third question.
There's a third question?
Believe it or not, there's
Don't
four
tell Mike
questions.
about the fourth question.
Yeah, we're not gonna mention it. Who knows? But so here's the question. Hopefully, shouldn't be that hard. Shouldn't be too yapalicious, right? So do you think this decision could change in the future? Is this like set in stone in your opinion? And we'll start with Mike.
Yeah, I think I'm going to just pass it off to Borgarden just because I know his time is limited. He needs to go to work. He's a working
It's only
man.
fair. I got to go first last time.
I need to use the restroom.
Too much beer, probably, if you have to use the restroom that often. Okay. Well, I don't think it is set in stone. No, I don't think anything is set in stone. And as we continue our work as the committee, we will hopefully listen to what the players say and revise our decisions when they have been bad. I think you have to always view that in the context of the time or the history. As we said earlier on, some of the cards that exist now did not exist when the format was first born. So you have always to consider that things change. I mean, in our world, names change. Just think about mana cost or mana value or CMC. And if we have the nomenclature change, if we have rules changes, of course, decisions like this also have to change and consider new developments. So I don't think this is set in stone. I think it is a good solution for now, but it may be changed in the future, of course.
Hey, Charlotte, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think I could have said it better than what Borgarden just said. That was very beautifully put. Magic is and will fundamentally always be a game about change and innovation, I think is the word I would use. The designers are constantly trying to come up with new ways to play Magic. I don't think it is any different for the Tiny Leaders team to not necessarily innovate, but it's not an unfamiliar concept to Magic players to have to adapt to a new change that Wizards implements. So I don't think it's too different if we do. And so in terms of looking to the future, like for me, when I was kind of in the driver's seat, it did come down to, well, what do the players think? I like really advocated for taking surveys or just like asking publicly what people thought about something, even kind of deviously, like, hey, what do people think about Umezawa's Jite? Bad example because that card was banned super quick, but there was a time when it wasn't, and well, I just wanted to know, so I just asked, and people gave their honest thoughts. So it's like, yeah, opportunities like that are ways that the community can kind of give indirect feedback, but private feedback is equally valuable. That's a tangent for another time, but all that to say, like, yeah, the players ultimately should have an influence on rules changes like this and like the nature of Magic format. So I don't think anything is going to be set in stone ever, but for now, this is what's on the slate. So that's what we should be referring to in the present.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not gonna close things out this time. We're going crazy. So in my opinion, yeah, this is an absolute mess of a
I hope you're prepared
episode.
for tomorrow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, in my opinion, I would say this is a decision that we made as a committee. This is not a decision that everybody made as a community, right? And I think that's something that is a bit tricky, and I think we'll probably get into it on the fourth question, hopefully. But basically,
There's a fourth question.
yeah. But basically, that this is something that we've decided with very minimal community feedback. And, like the thought process was, this is probably something that not a whole lot of people are going to care all that much about because it's only covering like roughly like 30 cards in the format, and almost none of those cards are particularly, at least in the competitive level, particularly playable. And at the casual level, I mean, you have 10,000 cards. No, over 10,000 cards at this point. I don't know how many cards are in Magic. Too many. But, 30 cards is a drop in the ocean. So, yeah, overall, I think this is probably small potatoes. But if we get, like, overwhelming opinions from the community that this was the wrong decision, or there's enough interest in entertaining a different decision, then obviously we're going to listen to that. We are a fan-made format, and we're just too small of a community to make decisions that are going to piss people off, right? It's something where
it's meant for fun. You want everybody to have fun.
Exactly.
And everybody should feel inspired to build the decks they want. And so it's like, is there ever going to be a fully happy medium? Probably never.
Yeah.
But that's just by proxy of there's 30,000 cards in Magic and however many there are in Tiny Leaders. So.
Yeah. But basically, this is a decision that we as a committee has made. However, we're still in essentially the appeals phase of it, where we just don't have to keep this decision forever. But on to Mike's thoughts. Is this decision set in stone? Could it change? Do you think it should
Cemented,
change?
cement blocks and fucking drop them in the lake. Nah, I'm just kidding, guys. Look,
what are you on about? How big was that beer? What was the alcohol content on that?
By the way, it was an Allagash triple, and it was absolutely delicious.
Delicious.
Like, here's the deal, guys. I'm obsessed with Tiny Leaders. I've been obsessed with Tiny Leaders since 2015, and I am so happy in the committee being a bunch of people who are also pretty much obsessed with Tiny Leaders. We think about Tiny Leaders all the time. Well, I do. And I think they do too. And it wasn't a decision that we took lightly. It took 2 months of discussion, debate, and obviously some outside feedback from Charlotte. But there was a misstep. Carbon, shout out Carbon, Big Bird. I love you. Look, part of this is new, at least for me. I've been on the committee 1 year as a consultant, and this is my first year as a core member. And I think this was a misstep, a little bit of a misstep. Carbon, you're right. We should have made it a little bit more clear that we were considering this. I have always championed this format, at least since I've been a part of it. And what I mean by a part of it is since I've been part of the Discord, which was pretty much early on in its inception, probably a couple months after that it was created, that it be a format that is absolutely grassroots. I think for me, at least, Charlotte and Steven and Matt were inspirations about that where at least because it became my favorite format instantly, I identified with them. Not like, the other formats. And look, other formats are cool. Well, fuck it. If that's your flavor, then that's you. Be it pre-modern, old school, or noble. Those are all pretty niche. But if that's what you're stuffing in your face, good for you. Tiny Leaders is it for me. And man, it's so hard to keep your thoughts together when you're buzzed as fuck. But what was I saying? Yeah.
Like,
we should have at least kind of gotten some kind of consensus. I don't think that would have changed the result. I don't know if that's worse or better, but it's definitely at least made it clear to me that we need to have a little bit more involvement. And so we're already discussing making, I think we've been pretty good about the ban and watch list updates that we said, hey, we're going to do it at standard release. And man, fuck you, WotC, for making them so frequent. Because it feels like so much work. And, in a way, we're happy to do it. In a big way, we're happy to do it, actually. Because you can tell, because we're not getting paid for it. You're welcome. But we're already talking about regular updates about committee initiatives that are happening so that you guys know we're not just this kind of anomalous organization who wears robes and uses hoods and, cool language, maybe some kind of ritual in the middle of the night. But we're here for you because we are you. Something that upon me suggesting that Price of Progress be unbanned, this was, of course, in my pre-committee days, and having the entire server explode. And then there was one person where I was kind of like, it's just me fucking spitballing. Nobody gives a fuck about what I say. I'm just some fucking random. And they said, you know what? You're not just a random. You're a player of this format. Your opinion matters. And keep at it. That was Sarah. Thank you for saying those words, by the way.
we love Sarah.
We do. And we should be respectful of all the players, of those that interact with us in the main server, and those who are just kind of subject to our whims when they see updates on the blog spot. Right? So I think that
I'm going to pull you back down to earth.
Yeah, pull me.
Just so we can move on, honey.
Oh shit. Listen, if you guys know anything about Latin American television, there's this show called Sábado Gigante, which means giant Saturday. They have this guy called El Chacal, which basically translates to the jackal. And there's some sort of telling contest. And when you suck, he plays a trumpet and he goes, that's what Charlotte's doing to me. Thank you, Charlotte.
That is exactly what I'm doing to you.
Yeah. But
it's like a cartoon where I'm pulling the cane and I'm taking you off of the stage.
Yeah. Muppet
Best
style.
single episode of Tiny Talk, by the way.
Well, we've only recorded 3 of them, so, But
So the listeners are in store for a treat for episode 4.
yeah. For reference, we're recording that tomorrow.
We sure are.
It's gonna be interesting. But that'll be coming out
Features
in
Gavin
November.
Verhey from WotC.
Yeah, special guest
Yeah.
Mark Rosewater.
Yeah, Brian
Right.
Cox himself.
But
But
with respect to Borgarden's time, we should either
Yes.
do the last question or
so we're just
skedaddle.
we're gonna segue into that final question, which for nobody really cares. But this last question is like, what have we learned from this? And yeah, Mike basically covered what I think we learned is that we need to be more like clear with the community on rules changes like this. Now, it was like, you know the length of this video. You know how long this is. This is just like we had to like stop ourselves from yapping, right? On multiple occasions.
Correction, we had to stop Mike from yapping.
Kinda, but you're also a yapper.
No, who told you?
But basically, yeah, this is a really complex topic and a lengthy topic, and so we worried that if we just like offer this up to the community as a whole, there would be a lot of people who either A, don't understand what we're talking about, B, are going to, have some out there opinion that really doesn't, they've stepped into Tiny Leaders like a week ago and are making an opinion on this. Or, then there's going to be those group of people that actually have like well thought out responses and understand what we're asking and stuff like that. And so we were worried that if we like brought this topic up, it would be a mess. And maybe it would have been, but I think at least bringing it up, like maybe at all, when we were talking about this for 2 straight months, just like, getting any amount of community feedback beyond Charlotte, what would be pretty cool, I think. And I think in the future we should probably be more transparent about that. It's easy to do with bans. It's a lot harder to do with rules changes, and we haven't needed to make one since the partner rules change. And so I think that's something we're gonna have to get better at as a committee. But
Yeah, and I think that should open the forum to people listening. Like, how would you best like to give feedback? Would you prefer something like a submissions box, an email, or do you prefer engaging in the community discussions in the Discord server? They're all completely valid avenues to communicate with us. A lot of the committee members are like pretty active, like daily users of the Discord server, and even players in the monthly tournaments, So, like, I would venture to say, hey, my DMs are open if you want to pass something along to me to pass along to the committee, just as an example. As I'm sure Mike or Cosmarian or Borgarden would take a message equally,
Send all your suggestions to @thecosmarian@gmail.edu.
yeah, that's definitely
Yeah, that's a real email.
Yeah, a real email that does exist, yes. But I mostly want to hear Borgarden's thoughts, mostly because he's like the least yappy of us all and has been kind of quiet and patient here and also needs to go. So
Very
what's your
patient.
thought?
Thank you.
Well, that's just the way I am. I mean, I can also yap. If you give me the right beer, I can also yap. But I prefer to be precise on my thoughts. But so what have we learned? I think we have learned that it is very good that we have a committee who tackles these difficult questions. And I think it's always hard how much you want to involve the community. I don't know if you ever, I had I don't know the English term, when you have what's the term when you have people that work for you? How are they called?
Employees?
Like employees or delegates.
Charlotte.
Employees, thank you, Charlotte. Yeah. Employees,
Yeah,
that was
I
the
work
term
for
I was looking
everyone.
for. So I had a practice with like up to 15 employees, and so as the person giving the job, you have to always think about how much do you want to involve your employees, and I think it's the same here. I think it would have been a good idea to just inform the community about the upcoming rules change and get like a feeling for how the community feels. But of course, this topic, as Cosmarian already said, is very, very complex. And I don't think that everybody can really grasp the complexity of it. So that's like a very difficult avenue to walk to. How much do we involve the community? How much do we do for ourselves? But if we put ourselves this question, why do we have a committee at all? We have a committee to tackle these questions, to keep the bands in check and all that stuff. And I think we're doing a good work. What maybe would be a good idea now, and we are already talking about this behind the scenes, is that we want to expand the committee. We have grown the server so much, especially since Cosmarian went up with her videos and stuff, and I'm very happy about it. And maybe we should just grow the community a little bit of people to have more opinions on these kind of topics. And that's my word. That's my last words. I drop the mic now. Enough yapping here from me. Thank you.
And the episode is over.
Is the episode over? Are we done? All right.
I mean,
I think that wraps it up and puts a nice little bow on it.
What do you-
I don't think I can add anything to what Borgarden said. It's brilliant.
We've yipped our
it
last
is
yap.
brilliant.
We've yipped our last yap. Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I like
I
that.
could stay on, and you could cut like an after show, you know?
Yeah, all of our little
Anytime
Discord
episode
icons
3 after
log
show.
off, but Mike stays on, and then the video runtime is 7 hours.
Yeah.
I'll still have a lot to say.
4 hours, 7 hours of Mike yapping for you to fall asleep to. Yeah.
No. Mike continuously doing beer reviews, getting more and more.
Yes, yes, deck techs, but each deck tech gets a bit sloppier the more beer he has.
Okay.
I'll take that challenge.
Yeah, we gotta end the video before it gets even more unhinged. So, as always, give us your thoughts on this episode in the comments. Also, if you're not on the Discord somehow, you should get on the Discord. And yeah, I've been the Cosmarian, and stay tiny.